In 1940, a novel sold over 250,000 copies within months of its release, making its author the first black writer to achieve major commercial success. But here's the twist. That same book has been banned from schools and libraries for over 80 years. Today, we're diving into Richard Wright's Native Son, specifically how this groundbreaking novel shocked white America, why it continues to be one of the most challenged books in American literature, and what Wright's radical vision reveals about systemic racism that still makes people uncomfortable today. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why this book remains both essential and controversial. Let me bring in someone who can help us unpack why Native Son hit like a literary earthquake when it was published.
Native Son was unlike any book by an African-American writer ever published up to that time. According to EBSCO research, Wright himself said about his previous work, Uncle Tom's Children, that he had written a book which even bankers' daughters could read and weep over and feel good.
So he deliberately wanted to make people uncomfortable this time?
Exactly. Wright was done with what he saw as sanitized portrayals of black experience. He wanted to show the raw, unfiltered reality of systemic racism through Bigger Thomas, a young black man living in poverty on Chicago's South Side in the 1930s.
And Bigger Thomas is not exactly a sympathetic character, right? He commits some pretty horrific acts.
That's the genius and the controversy of Wright's approach. According to the page content, Bigger accidentally kills a white woman, Mary Dalton, and then tries to cover it up. But Wright presents this not as individual evil, but as the inevitable result of a society that systematically oppresses and dehumanizes black people.
So Wright is saying society created this monster?
According to critical race theory analysis in the page content, Wright exposes racial domination not as individual prejudice, but as a structural force that warps identity, distorts justice, and creates violence. The novel paints a deeply uncomfortable portrait of a society complicit in creating the very monsters it fears.
That's a pretty radical argument for 1940. How did people react?
The reaction was explosive. One of the first reviews called it a blinding and corrosive study in hate. The reviewer, David L. Cohn, accused Wright himself of being hate-consumed and said the book was an incitement to violence.
Wait, they were saying Wright was promoting violence against white people?
According to the JSTOR analysis, Cohn actually said the preaching of Negro hatred of whites by Mr. Wright is on a par with the preaching of white hatred of Negroes by the Ku Klux Klan. That's how threatening this book felt to some white readers.
That's an incredible comparison. But the book was also commercially successful, right?
Absolutely. According to EBSCO research, Native Son captured national attention, selling over 250,000 copies within months of its release, making Wright a vital voice on race relations in America. It immediately established Wright as an important author and spokesman on conditions facing African Americans.
So people were buying it even as they were condemning it. What was Wright trying to show through Bigger's psychology?
According to SparkNotes analysis, Bigger's psychological damage results from the constant barrage of racist propaganda and racial oppression he faces while growing up. The movies he sees depict whites as wealthy sophisticates and black people as jungle savages.
So the media was literally programming him to see himself as less than human?
Exactly. And here's what's really striking. According to the analysis, Bigger's resulting attitude toward whites is a volatile combination of powerful anger and powerful fear. He conceives of whiteness as an overpowering and hostile force that is set against him in life.
And then when he accidentally kills Mary Dalton, how does he react?
This is where Wright really challenges readers. According to SparkNotes, Bigger's accidental killing of Mary Dalton does not fill him with guilt. Instead, he feels an odd jubilation because, for the first time, he has asserted his own individuality against the white forces that have conspired to destroy it.
That's deeply disturbing, but also psychologically fascinating. Wright is showing how oppression can twist someone's sense of agency.
Right. And Wright emphasizes what he calls the vicious double-edged effect of racism. Though Bigger's violence stems from racial hatred, it only increases the racism in American society, as it confirms racist whites' basic fears about black people.
So it becomes this terrible cycle. The oppression creates the violence, which then justifies more oppression.
Exactly. According to the analysis, in Wright's portrayal, whites effectively transform black people into their own negative stereotypes of blackness. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy of the worst kind.
Now, I'm starting to understand why this book has been so controversial for so long. Let's talk about the censorship. What happened when they tried to adapt it for film?
Oh, this is fascinating. According to the Library of Congress, the film was shot in Argentina by French director Pierre Chanal from a screenplay written by Wright, who also unusually starred as the lead character, Bigger Thomas himself.
Wright played Bigger? That's incredible. But then what happened when it came to America?
Native Son premiered in Argentina in 1951, but was heavily censored for its U.S. release. According to the Library of Congress, censors cut comments about white race hatred, shortened sequences depicting Thomas's consultations with lawyers and his murder trial, and removed scenes showing a white lynch mob and police violence.
So they literally cut out the parts that showed white violence and systemic racism?
Exactly. In one scene, censors cut a scene in which Thomas kills a foot-long rat in the family apartment, softening the depiction of brutal living conditions. In another, censors deleted a discussion about smashing the Jim Crow system.
The rat scene is actually symbolic, isn't it? I read that the rat represents how white society sees black people.
According to the literary analysis, the rat represents the fear and disgust that white society has for black individuals. The rat is used as a metaphor for Bigger himself, as he is seen as a pest that needs to be exterminated. This symbolism highlights the dehumanization of black individuals.
So by cutting the rat scene, they were literally censoring Wright's point about dehumanization. That's almost too perfect.
And here's what's really striking. For some 6 decades, the censored version of Native Son was the only one available, until the library restored the original film to its original 107 minutes using a 16mm Argentine print and an international version discovered in an abandoned nitrate film vault in Puerto Rico.
So Wright's original vision was basically erased for 60 years. What about the book itself? Has it faced similar challenges?
According to classic banned books, Native Son has long been a lightning rod for controversy, frequently challenged and banned for its graphic depictions of violence, sexual content, and strong language. Since its publication in 1940, it has been removed from school curricula and libraries across the United States.
What are the main objections people have?
Critics often object to its raw depiction of a black protagonist committing violent acts, as well as the explicit exploration of systemic racism, poverty, and oppression. School boards, parents, and censors argue that its disturbing scenes and unfiltered portrayal of racial tensions are inappropriate for readers, especially students.
But isn't that exactly Wright's point? That people don't want to confront these uncomfortable truths?
Absolutely. And here's where it gets really interesting. Even among black intellectuals, there was debate. According to the JSTOR analysis, James Baldwin discovered in much of Wright's work a murderous bitterness and violence, calling it gratuitous and compulsive.
So even Baldwin, who was fighting for civil rights, thought Wright went too far?
Baldwin argued that the violence was the rage, almost literally the howl, of a man who is being castrated. He saw it as Wright trying to break out of the cage in which the American imagination had imprisoned him for so long.
That's such a powerful image. But what about more recent scholarship? How do critics view the book today?
This is where it gets really fascinating. According to recent Cambridge University research by Nicholas Reinhardt, Wright's revisions actually render protagonist Bigger Thomas an icon of global class conflict, rather than a national figure of racial tension.
Wait, so Wright was thinking globally, not just about American racism?
Exactly. The research argues that Native Son should be understood as a work of world literature addressing economic oppression on a broader, global scale. Wright himself wrote that the problem of the Negro in America is a phase of this general problem, containing and telescoping the longings in the lives of a billion-colored subject colonial people into a symbol.
So Bigger Thomas represents oppressed people everywhere, not just Black Americans?
According to the Cambridge research, Wright fashioned Native Son not from a claustrophobia of vision, but rather from an incipient globalism. The novel's global afterlife in post-colonial contexts is actually a recapitulation of its explicit globalism.
That completely reframes how we should read this book. It's not just about 1930s Chicago, it's about systemic oppression everywhere.
Right. And this challenges the critical convention that divides Wright's career into his American period and later self-exile. The research emphasizes that Wright's worldliness should be traced back through his revision of Native Son. His globalism was actually the single theme that unifies his entire body of work.
So when people try to ban this book today, what are they really afraid of?
According to the analysis, Wright broke new ground by centering a complex and deeply flawed black protagonist, thereby forcing readers to confront the psychological effects of systemic racism. Wright's commitment to social realism and his willingness to expose uncomfortable truths made him both a celebrated and controversial figure.
And those uncomfortable truths are still uncomfortable today.
Exactly. The novel is not only a psychological portrait of one man, but also a searing indictment of a society that creates the conditions for such tragedies. And, according to the research, Wright's ability to articulate these experiences makes Native Son a crucial work that continues to resonate in contemporary discussions about race and inequality.
What's the lasting impact been on American literature?
According to the research, Native Son changed the landscape of American literature by bringing racial representation to the forefront. It not only sparked critical discussions but also influenced future generations of Black writers, paving the way for more nuanced representations of African American experiences.
So even though it's been banned and censored, it fundamentally changed how we write about race in America?
Absolutely. Wright's groundbreaking novel shifted the perception of what it means to be Black in modern America in such a profound way that it remains part of the landscape of race relations to this day.
You know what strikes me about all this? The fact that people are still trying to ban this book actually proves Wright's point about society creating the very monsters it fears.
That's such an insightful observation. The continued attempts at censorship show that the uncomfortable truths Wright exposed about systemic racism and its psychological effects are still too threatening for some people to confront.
So when you step back from all this, what's the real significance of Native Son? Why does this 84-year-old book still matter so much?
Native Son matters because it refuses to let us look away from the systemic forces that shape individual lives. Wright showed us that Bigger Thomas isn't a monster born in a vacuum. He's the product of a society that systematically dehumanizes and oppresses people, then acts shocked when that oppression creates violence.
And that's still happening today. We're still having conversations about systemic racism, about how poverty and oppression create cycles of violence, about how society creates the very problems it then condemns.
Exactly. Wright's global vision, seeing the connection between racial oppression in America and colonial oppression worldwide, feels incredibly relevant as we grapple with ongoing inequality and injustice. The book remains both essential and controversial because it forces us to examine our own complicity in these systems.
Here's what I find remarkable. Wright wrote a book so powerful and so truthful that people are still trying to silence it 80 years later. That tells you everything you need to know about both the book's importance and the persistence of the problems it exposes. Native Son isn't just a novel. It's a mirror that shows us exactly what we don't want to see about ourselves and our society.